Good day to everyone. My name is Albert Avila, and I am honored to participate in the first annual Culture Symposium organized by the Heritage Education Network Belize. Please join me as I share with you a project I participated in as a consultant called the Belize City House of Culture and Downtown Rejuvenation Project. The Downtown Rejuvenation Project was a project that had as its aim to first create a product that would improve on the downtown Belize city's socio-economic integration, and secondly, to build that integration with the core competencies of downtown, the historic value, the cultural heritage, the economic activity, and the community. Although the Downtown Rejuvenation Project ended in November 2020, we need to decide how we will continue improving on the eco-museum product that has been created in downtown as a result of the project. Downtown is the birthplace of a large part of our history, and it is important that we preserve it so that all Belizeans will become aware of whence we came. The project involved the preservation of our tangible, intangible, and cultural heritage assets. The purpose of the preservation of these assets is so that future Belizeans, no matter which ethnic group we are associated with, would have a place where we could immerse ourselves in the environment and reflect on how we became who we are today. The Downtown Rejuvenation Project was merely the first step to install the foundation of an eco-museum in downtown. The next step is for our cultural organizations, entrepreneurs, artists, musicians, tour guides, entrepreneurs, businesses, and the adjacent communities to continue to build on what the project has already built. The task of these stakeholders is to ultimately transform downtown into a cultural and historic destination so that the improvement of the socio-economic integration that the creators of the project had envisioned could someday be achieved. Now let's look at the details of this project. This presentation normally takes about 45 minutes. However, we'll go through it in 13 minutes. So we are going to go through it very quickly. If you have any questions, you can ask me during the questions and answer session at the end of this presentation. Belize City was discovered in around 1638. And since that time, Belize City has been growing haphazardly and without any plan. All of that eventually was catching up with us in modern day Belize City. And so the government contracted a company to conduct an urban development study in 2010. The conclusion of that study was that urban sprawl, lack of land use and planning, ineffective response to climate change, and lack of socio-economic integration was causing a gradual decrease in the primacy of Belize City. There has been a deterioration of the urban fabric capacity to address present and future demands of its citizens. If nothing was done to rejuvenate the city could become dysfunctional. The solution was, apart from redefining and improving on the urban infrastructure and fabric of the city, there was a need to rediscover the true value of Belize City. The study recommended 16 projects, one of which was a Downtown Rejuvenation Project. In order for us to have the same idea of where downtown is located, let us take a closer look at where downtown is located for the purpose of this presentation. When we refer to downtown and the scope area of the Downtown Rejuvenation Project, we are referring to all that area between the Swing Bridge to the north, Yabra Bridge to the south, East Canal to the west, and the foreshore to the east. Why should downtown be important to us Belizeans? Here are 6 reasons. The first is that this is where some of the first inhabitants of Belize City lived around 1661. The second, downtown was a seat of government before there was Belmopan. The third, Downtown possesses the highest concentration of historic sites in the entire country. Fourth, downtown was once the center of economic activity and it still is up to today. Fifth, downtown was also the center of community gatherings. And sixth, it could be considered the cradle of the Creole culture. One of the dilemmas Belize City was experiencing according to the 2010 study was that Belize City's residents were moving out of Belize City. Belize City is one of the few cities in the world where residents were moving away from the main urban center instead of into it. One of the solutions was that we should try to improve on the socio-economic integration of downtown. But what is socio-economic integration? Let us take a look at two of Belize City's parks as an example. What does DigiPark has that the Memorial Park on the right does not have? If you said people, you would have been correct. We could say then that DigiPark has achieved socioeconomic integration and Memorial Park has not. The original plan was to refurbish the government house property and install a marina. By doing this, the implementers believe that this would have encouraged more visitors to visit downtown. However, Taiwan ICDF, the lender of the loan, recommended to include a larger area, that being the entire downtown. By doing that, we could have built on the core competencies that downtown had to offer to attract visitors into downtown. But why was downtown chosen as the area to create a destination that would attract more people into the city? Well, to understand this, let us look at an analogy. Downtown Belize City is like a pile of firewood in your backyard. That firewood takes up space and it might not be a pretty sight to some people. However, that pile of wood has what I refer to as latent potential, meaning that it only needs a catalyst to help it release its potential. In the case of the firewood, all we need to do is to add some lighter fuel and fire, and that pile of wood will cook your dinner, keep you warm on a cold night or day, and it could create enough power to move a locomotive. Well, downtown is like that pile of firewood. All we need to do is to release its latent potential of historic value, cultural heritage, economic activity, and the community. The catalyst that will be used to release the energy in downtown was the creation of an eco-museum in downtown. The vision for the Downtown Rejuvenation project was to improve the socio-economic integration of downtown over the next 5 to 10 years. So how are we going to achieve our vision of socio-economic integration in downtown? To repeat, we were going to do that by building on the core competencies that downtown had to offer. Those were the historic value, the cultural heritage, the community, the economic activity, and I would add one more, the geography. The broad aims and objectives of the project were the improvement of our national historic legislation, increasing our awareness of our cultures and self-identity, increasing our willingness to preserve and protect our historic and heritage buildings, increase our public spaces, and the enhancement of downtown's physical infrastructure. Like most projects, the Downtown Rejuvenation project was divided into two components: hard components and soft components. There were three areas that made up the project's soft component strategies, and they were community capacity building, creating an oral history program, and establishing an eco-museum concept in downtown Belize City. There were some benefits that were to be achieved under the project. Under the soft components, the benefits were to increase Belizean awareness, knowledge, and appreciation of their historical heritage, increase our willingness to preserve our heritage, and increase our willingness to protect our heritage. Under the hard components, to support the change towards better security and a friendlier environment for residents and visitors, and attract more economic activities and contribute to income generation in the targeted areas. Let us look at some of the beneficiaries of the project. They were going to be owners of houses to be renovated, residents of downtown, Belizean citizens, the Belize City municipality, businesses in downtown, and tourists, both foreign and domestic. There were two strategies under the hard components. There were three projects under the first strategy. The first was the restoration to the government house buildings and grounds and a new building for the House of Culture. Government House was the original House of Culture. However, after 206 years, it had gotten too old, so it was decided that it would be best to have the Government House do a more mundane type of service, such as converting it to a museum. Therefore, the training of dancers and musicians would be conducted in a new House of Culture building. The third project was the rebuilding of the Carriage House, which became the new Office of Lynch. The second strategy under the hard components was divided into two categories of projects. The first was the restoration and rebuilding of selected heritage buildings within the downtown area, and those included the Belize Heritage Plaza, the Women's Department Building, St. John's Anglican Cathedral, the Ronald Greenwell House, and the Courthouse Building. The second strategy was the redesigning of selected public spaces, and that included Mule Park, Battlefield Park, the Yarborough basketball and football field, and the Yarborough Cemetery. Okay, so far you've heard the vision, the mission, the objectives, the aims, the strategies of the hard components and the soft components of the Downtown Rejuvenation Project. But how are we going to draw visitors into downtown, you might ask? Well, we were going to accomplish it by transforming downtown into a destination, by utilizing the eco-museum concept. But what is a destination? By definition, a destination is a place that people will make a special trip to visit. Therefore, downtown would have become a historic and cultural destination, and we would have utilized an eco-museum concept to achieve it. What is an eco-museum? Simply put, an eco-museum has to be experienced. It is a dynamic way in which communities preserve through local participation, interpret and manage their heritage with the aim of enhancing the welfare and development of their communities. Let us look at four attributes of an eco-museum. The first is that although there could be an indoor museum within an eco-museum setting, the eco-museum is basically an outdoor instead of an indoor museum. The second attribute is that the display would be dynamic and interactive rather than passive, which means that there would be interaction with the visitors. The visitors would be encouraged to participate with the artisans in the display or through workshops. The third attribute is very important because these days our tourists are becoming very complex. They don't only want to be entertained when they come to our destinations, they want to be dazzled. And for us to dazzle our visitors, we need to let them involve all of their five senses. Currently, most of our guided tours only let our visitors use their sense of sight and sound. But in an eco-museum, visitors would use their sense of taste through culinary cuisines, smell by the fragrances emanating from local urban gardens, and touch by participating instead of only viewing. In this way, visitors would have a more holistic and unforgettable experience. So far in this presentation, we have presented the infrastructural part of the project, and we've presented the social part of the project. But the project is about increasing socioeconomic integration in downtown Belize City. So the other part of that equation is the economic part, right? And that brings us to the fourth attribute of our eco-museum. And the attributes that can be derived from an eco-museum in downtown are increased economic activity, increased businesses, increased employment, increased spending power of the community, increased security for residents and the community, better environment in the downtown area, increased revenues for the municipality. In 2019, right across the river from the downtown area, our cruise ship terminals brought in about 900,000 people. Around 1 million people came on cruise ships. Of those million, 600,000 actually came on land. Most of those tourists, almost all of those tourists, were taken in bus, cars, boats, taxis, vans, and they were taken all over the country. Very few of them stayed in downtown Belize City because basically there was nothing there to really attract them to go into downtown. But let's say we could really get this eco-museum going in downtown Belize City. And we could attract maybe 100,000 of those million tourists. This is after COVID, once tourism gets going. And the average of those tourists is about $140 per day they spend. So if we could get 100,000 tourists to spend $140, I think that's about $14 million per year. And over 15 years, that would be about $240 million. That's $240 million that downtown Belize City never had. And we could actually achieve that by completing our eco-museum concept in downtown Belize City. In conclusion, our eco-museum concept in downtown could become the creation of an area where all Belizeans could immerse themselves in our various ethnic groups, cultures, and in so doing, help to bridge the segregation gap and preserve our democracy.